When the song Take Me Home Country Roads hit the waves, music lovers were introduced to one of the best to come from the amazing John Denver. Additionally, for the next 20 years, the singer, composer, and actor was one of the most prominent acoustic performers of the 70s and one of the best-selling artists in those decades. More than a cherished voice, Denver was a role model celebrity. However, away from the camera, the photo Denver's personal fans were shocked by life painted. Couldn't believe this was the same artist they loved and respected. From admissions of ex-wives to documented accounts of the illicit activities in Denver, the horrific stories were truer than his fans hoped. Now, after years of conjecture, the true nature of the man has at last been made public, and it is more startling than anyone anticipated. Henry John was Denver's birth name. Dutzkondorf on the last day of December in 1943. Growing up in Roswell, New Mexico, Denver had the kind of childhood that many boys yearn for, a family with a passion for aviation. His father, Captain Henry Dutzkondorf, Sr., was a well-known Air Force pilot who set 3 speed records in a bomber known as the B-58 Hustler. The man was a hero in the military world and was even recognized by being assigned to the Air Force Hall of Renown. But for young Denver, the negative of this dreamy life was the instability nature of military life. The family had to relocate often, living in Arizona, Alabama, and Texas within a short amount of time. Unfortunately, Denver couldn't form close friends because he never stayed in one location long enough. Just when he began to settle in, it would be time to relocate once more. This departed him feeling lonely, like he didn't truly belong anywhere, a sensation that lasted with him for the rest of his life. When at the age of 11, Denver was residing in Tucson, Arizona, his grandmother gave him a nice present, an ancient Gibson guitar that had been made in the year 1910. Thus, when it reached Denver's hands, it was already more than 4 decades old. This guitar became his symbol of steadiness, and with it, he developed music that offered him peace during some lonely moments. He soon graduated to joining the Tucson, Arizona Boys in song. He learned how to sing in the chorus, harmony, and give a public performance. By the time he was in high school, he was already performing folk songs at little shows. Music was growing in popularity. Then just a hobby. It was how he found his position in the ever-evolving world. A realm that contained his very strict dad. Denver's father, Dutch, encouraged him to excel in everything. However, Denver was a straightforward person who just wanted to write songs. This made the father and son's connection often difficult. Still, the two of them shared one profound passion, flying. When Denver learned how to fly, it gave them something they could finally enjoy together. They grew closer as a result. Perhaps it was the risk of the action that made them aware of the significance of living family members. That same risk would later have a terrible role much later in Denver's existence. For Denver, the emotion, the freedom he gained from flying remained with him and frequently appeared in his music. Following high school, Denver attended Texas Tech University to study architecture. But he rapidly understood he didn't want to design buildings. He wanted to make music. So he left school and relocated to Los Angeles. About that time, he chose to alter his final name. He selected Denver after the capital of Colorado because he adored the state's mountains and rivers. It felt like a fresh start. In the mid-1960s, Denver got a big break. Out of roughly 200 among the vocalists who tried out, he was selected to be Chad Mitchell's lead vocalist. 3. This was his first meaningful chance in the world of music. It gave him the chance to perform in front of crowds nationwide. He stayed with the organization for around 2 years and recorded 3 albums. Being on stage helped him feel more confident as a vocalist. Life on the road was challenging, yet Denver drank it all in and slowly began to discover his voice. One of the most well-known songs he composed during the time was Taking Off in a Jet Plane. The folk group Peter, Paul, and Mary recorded it in the late 1960s, and by the end of that decade, it became a #1 hit on the Billboard charts. Even though Denver wasn't yet a well-known solo artist, that song proved that his writing might actually connect with others. When the 3 of them split up, Denver didn't look back. He was already starting to climb the charts on his own. Going from a group vocalist to a solo artist wasn't easy, but Denver made it seem like it was. His career actually took off in the early 1970s with the release of his breakthrough album, Poems, Prayers, and Promises. The song Take Me Home Country Roads became a classic, but it almost didn't occur. The first copies of the song had sound troubles and for a long it appeared to be in danger of failing. However, his new manager Jerry Winrob didn't give up. He pushed radio stations starting in Denver, Colorado to play the tune. It was gradually launched at the middle of April. Caught on. By late August, it had attained the second spot on the Billboard Hot 100. It sold more than 1 million copies and went gold that same month. Over the years, the song kept popular and would eventually sell more than 1.5 millions of digital copies in the United States by themselves. Its impact was so powerful that West Virginia made it one of their official state songs. In 1972, Denver followed up with a new album called Rocky Mountain High, which was published in September. It was his sixth album and the first to appear in the top 10 in the U.S. It peaked at number 4 on the Billboard 200 chart. The title track Rocky Mountain High became one of his most cherished tunes, reaching the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 in the year 1973. It was ranked number 29 the same year on the year-end chart and turned into a choice among fans who enjoyed nature and the outdoors. The record cover was taken near Slaughterhouse Falls in Aspen, Colorado, making the song much more personal to Denver. Many years later, Rocky Mountain High was recognized as one of Colorado's 2 official state songs. The years 1974 and 1975 were Denver's most successful. In just 18 months, he had 4 tracks achieve number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Sunlight on My Shoulders got number 1 in March of 1974. In July, Annie's song came next. Thank God I'm a Country Boy reached the peak in May 1975. I Apologize as well came in September of the same year. These tunes revealed his numerous facets. Talent. Some were friendly and hopeful, similar to Sunshine on My Shoulders. Others I'm grateful to be a country boy. Full of energy and joy. The song by Annie, which he authored in about 10 minutes for his spouse, turned into a traditional wedding favorite. By now, Denver was everywhere on the radio, on television, and in millions of households throughout the country. In this golden age, he also put out 3 albums, all of which were to number 1. Denver's biggest hits, released in 1973, became RCA's best-selling album. Records history, even selling more than Elvis Presley. His album, Back Home Again, released in 1974, went triple platinum in the United States. Then in 1975, he released Windong, which went 2 platinums. Together, these 3 albums established that Denver was a true superstar in music. By the conclusion of his career, he had created over 300 songs and had composed almost 200 of them himself. In total, he earned 12 gold albums as well as 4 platinum records. Around the world, his music sold more than 33 million copies, placing him among the most successful singer-songwriters of the 1970s. Denver's foray into Hollywood was both unexpected and effective. In 1977, he played alongside comic great George Burns in the popular movie Oh God. Even though Denver has never behaved previously, his warm nature and honesty won over audiences. The film, directed by Carl Reiner and based on a novel by Avery Corman, described the tale of a typical grocery store manager chosen by God to convey a message from God. Denver's The performance seemed authentic and plausible, making it easy for people to connect with his character. The film turned into a big success, earning more than $51 million in the United States and even receiving an Oscar nomination for the script. Denver didn't come back for his initial position in the film's sequels demonstrated that he was not limited to singing. He became one of the rare musicians to successfully cross over into acting. Denver gained popularity outside of the U.S., even though some detractors didn't think he could. His manager, Jerry Winrob, thought it was crucial for Denver to establish direct communication with supporters in different countries. So despite some doubts, Winrob organized a number of televised specialties aimed at British viewers. He stated that because the detractors wouldn't make Denver famous, they would go straight to the people instead. The plan worked well. Denver's kind personality and good singing voice won over audiences in Britain and aided create a significant fan base across Europe. These specials proved that television could be an effective method to introduce artists to the world and helped make Denver an international star. His An Evening with John Denver, a special, even received a Primetime Emmy Award, one of the greatest accolades in television. He starred in numerous other specials in which he recounted tales, performed his songs, and performed with pals. These shows brought his music into homes across the country and around the world. Every performance seemed personal, and that helped make him one of the most loved performers of his era. But Denver was more than a vocalist. In the mid-1980s, he spoke before the U.S. Senate. When the time, parents were asking for cautionary labels on music they thought was too offensive. Even though Denver was recognized for gentle songs, he stood up to support free speech. One of his songs, Rocky Mountain High, was previously censored because many falsely thought it was about drugs. He clarified the facts and defended the right to express ideas. Many believed he would be in favor of warning labels, but he did not. That instant transformed the discourse around music and free speech, and their repercussions are still felt today. That same year, Denver became the first American performer in over 10 years to perform in the USSR during the Cold War. He performed in concerts. 11 cities, including Moscow, Tallinn, and Leningrad. His tour was more than just music. It was about connecting two distinct cultures. Even persons who did not understand English felt affected by his peaceful message and melodies. Inspired by the trip, he wrote a song called Let Instead Us Begin, advocated for peace of war. Recordings from that tour were published as the album Live in the USSR. Denver came back in the late 1980s to the Soviet Union after the Chernobyl nuclear tragedy, which prompted many people to abandon their homes and caused major health complications. He sung at a fundraising event in Moscow that raised a significant sum of money. More monies came from the recordings. That night was not about politics. It was concerning compassion and kindness. The viewers felt heard and seen. Denver demonstrated that even a single guitarist might create a big difference. Early in the 1990s, Denver introduced his music to China. After years of being walled off from the world, the Chinese people were curious concerning him. Songs like Country Roads were already been performed in classrooms. The government asked him to tour many cities, and one of his performances was transmitted to about 2 billion individuals. Some had desired to postpone the performance amid ancient places like the Forbidden City or the Temple of Heaven. Chinese youth embraced him with open arms, and even the head of state had taken notice of Denver years previously. His tour makes him one of the most popular Western musicians in China during the moment. Later in his life, Denver concentrated more on assisting others. In the 1990s, he published a greatest hits album called Homegrown. All of the money from that album went to support folks who were homeless. At this period, he also helped launch the World Hunger Project. In recognition of his work, he was awarded the Presidential World Without Hunger Award. He was also interested in environmental issues, leveraging his fame to boost awareness and assistance for the environment. Denver established the WinStar Foundation in addition to launched a project named Planted 2000, which emphasized planting trees and restoring forests. His philanthropic work proved equally significant to him as his music. However, his private life was filled with pain. His union with Annie Martel began like a dream. They took in 2 children together, and Denver even wrote Annie's song for her in under 10 minutes. But as his fame increased, so did the issues in their partnership. Annie often felt inconspicuous and lost in his shadow. By the early 1980s, they decided to divorce. What followed was messy and painful. Though Denver was usually gentle in public, he behaved exceedingly differently in private. Reports said he grew aggressive and unpredictable. The divorce was painful and devastating. One day, after Annie cut down some of his favorite oak trees at their property in Aspen, Denver lost control. Instead of, he arrived with a chainsaw after arguing and chop up their furnishings. He even sawed their bed in half. It was a frightening moment, a gloomy emblem of a marriage that had fallen apart. Friends, many onlookers could hardly believe this was the same soft-spoken singer they knew. Yet Denver had been the one to file for divorce. The court filings told a tale of mistreatment that ruined his cleanliness, healthy appearance. Friends supported Denver's side, as well as Annie's past management stated he had a dark anger. Even yet, Annie remained silent after the split. The harm to Denver's reputation had already been completed. Many people who once respected him began to see him in a very different light. Denver first met Australian singer and actress Cassandra Delaney at a hotel around the middle of the 1980s Sydney. He was performing in the hotel bar and was drawn to her. Their romance developed swiftly. By the late 1980s, they had a magnificent mountain wedding with close friends and family. It appeared to be a fairy tale, yet from the outset there were complications. Later on, Cassandra stated that being with a famous man was quite hard. Denver was considerably older than she. His notoriety followed them everywhere and his mood could change abruptly. To the general public, they looked wonderful, yet behind closed doors, it was tense. In the late 1980s, their daughter Jessie was born. Denver had thought for years that he couldn't having children due of a sickness he had had as a child. The birth of Jessie felt like a miracle. Some individuals even questioned if they sought medical assistance to possess her. After Jessie was born, Denver grew more in charge. Cassandra sensed he became aloof and envious. Their shaky connection began to fall apart. In the mid-1990s, Cassandra gave an interview with an Australian publication. She described Denver as someone who has no real companions. Workers were terrified about him. Secretaries often sobbed and quit. To the world, he seemed nice. However, this was only an act, according to Cassandra. He was often nasty and furious in private. She stated he drank a lot, shouted at her, and attempted to dominate her life. She stayed quiet for a long time, hoping he would alter, but nothing was beneficial. They separated in the early 1990s, and the divorce was complete a couple of years later. The legal battle was tough. Denver sued Cassandra for various $1 million and charged her with making him appear silly. Cassandra struggled to maintain Jessie's custody. Denver later discussed this in his book. He stated the divorce damaged him terribly. He was never quite the same after that. In the mid-1990s, he published his Take Me Home as an autobiography. It startled many fans. He wrote about using like LSD, cocaine, and cannabis. He also admitting to cheating on both of his wives. Even his first marriage to Annie Martel, which inspired the song Annie's Song, had a lot of extramarital encounters. He stated that he occasionally displayed greater violently than he should have. One tale stood out. He once employed a chainsaw to split a bed in two during a brawl. His clean image was broken. Fans witnessed a side they had never thought of him. Denver, formerly one of the most well-liked 1970s singer-songwriters. He hit the top of the music charts and captivated the hearts of millions with his soft acoustic style and voice. His record firm RCA helped him through 25 records, including 13 that reached gold and 8 that reached platinum. His greatest hits album became the best-selling record RCA ever had. But by the middle of the 1980s, things started to shift. Music styles were leaning toward heavier drum machines and synthesizers, and Denver's sound no longer fit in. In 1986, after RCA was sold to General Electric, the corporation opted to conserve funds and concentrate on up-and-coming talents. Even though Denver has a long and successful history with them, they let him leave. He was astounded. He had just finished what he imagined would be his next record with them called One World and believed renewing his contract was guaranteed. Instead, RCA elected to move on, thinking they could make more money from other artists. Denver stated they had taken him for granted, even after all the profit over the years he had brought them. With no other label prepared to accept him, his subsequent albums have to be released through his own label, Winstar. It was a terrible lesson that even huge talents can be left behind as music trends and business goals alter. As time has gone on, Denver spent more than 20,000 hours flying. He obtained a license to fly alone. Aircraft with engines, aircraft with multiple engines, gliders, and even less weight than air aircraft. However, in the 1990s, his own troubles began to catch up with him. Denver was detained for driving under the influence not just once but twice. The Federal Aviation Administration, which mandates that pilots possess a medical document attesting to their ready to fly, took action. Following his second arrest, they declined to renew his medical certification. Without that certificate, his certification as a pilot meant nothing. To get it back, he would have had to demonstrate that he had lost to alcoholism. However, he never finished that procedure. Once, flying had been his greatest joy, but suddenly even that was removed from him. What made it worse was how he responded to the FAA's demands. When they sent him certified letters requesting that he give up his medical certificate, he either ignored them or sent them back unopened. In terms of law, this established a loophole. Because he never accepted the letters, the FAA could not finish the procedure to withdraw his license. So on paper, he may still fly, but not because he was genuinely fit to. It was only because the system depended on his cooperation. That gap finally closed in March of 1997. Denver signed for one of the FAA's certified letters, which implied they could officially ground him. Based on that moment on, every flight he took was illegal. Getting regained his flying status would have needed to demonstrate his sobriety. By meeting all the rules he had overlooked for years, but Denver elected not to do that. Still, none of this stopped him from flying. On October 12, 1997, he took out a small experimental aircraft he recently made a purchase. He was getting ready. Landings and takeoffs close to Terry, California. The aircraft had been his for just one day and had only roughly half an hour with an instructor prior flying it by myself. The aircraft had been highly modified and was tough to function. One significant issue was the gasoline selector valve. It was relocated to a hard-to-reach place behind the pilot's left shoulder. To switch tanks, Denver had to reach back while twisting in his chair. Awkwardly. The valve was rigid and frequently needed to turn with pliers. The gauges for fuel were also behind him, so he couldn't read them effortlessly. He required a portable mirror to inspect them. And even then, the readings were not clear. In the morning, flying close to the Terry Peninsula Airport, he burned up the fuel in the left tank when practicing takeoffs and landings. Witnesses heard the engine splutter before becoming quiet. As the gasoline ran out, Denver tried to switch to the right tank. To do that, he had to reach behind him and use pliers to turn the valve. During that procedure, he accidentally pressed the right rudder pedal. The plane's nose dipped sharply down and within seconds, it smacked into the Pacific Ocean. Denver was killed instantly. Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board found that Denver had started the flight with too little fuel, only around 3 liters in one tank and 6 in the other. They said his unfamiliarity with the plane was a major reason for the crash. They also pointed out the unsafe design improvements that made switching fuel tanks in midair is practically unfeasible. Even though Denver was a talented pilot, he had not properly prepared for flying this aircraft. The report clarified that the collision might have been prevented. If Denver had trained more, refueled, or flown an aircraft with a more secure fuel system, perhaps the accident would never have occurred. His final trip was a melancholy reminder of how minor errors and disregarded alerts can lead to a sad end. Denver's death in the late 1990s were more than simply a sad event. It served as a reminder. While millions of admirers lamented the passing of a beloved folk singer, the collision also exposed a more nuanced aspect of his personal life. Denver's profound passion for flying sometimes crossed the border into dangerous activity. He had a reputation for performing glider tricks with the engine off and to fly even when he didn't have the appropriate medical approval. These activities showed a tendency to push boundaries, occasionally in dangerous ways. Even after the aviation officials warned him multiple times and took away his medical certificate, he kept flying. Additionally, the collision revealed several bad decisions. Taking a flight with little fuel, utilizing a plane with known design issues, and flying by yourself without filing a flight plan. These decisions were not random. They were part of a bigger pattern of dangerous actions that culminated in catastrophe. Although no drugs or alcohol were discovered in his body after the crash, his earlier arrests for driving under the influence and a collision in the mid-1990s when he had been drinking had already harmed his reputation. Still, despite these faults, Denver's legacy has kept strong. His music continues to touch individuals all across the world with its peaceful messages, love for the planet, and deep passion. Songs like Take Me Home, Country Roads, Annie's Song, and Rocky Mountain High are still cherished as timeless examples of folk and country music. Additionally, he was one of the first prominent musicians to make caring for the environment a huge aspect of his art, long before it became a widespread cause. In the end, people choose to recall John Denver's profound relationship to music and the natural world rather than for the poor decisions he made in life. His 15-foot bronze statue on display at Red Rocks Amphitheater flawlessly reminds fans of the brilliance of the individual who visited those nations' roads.